I'm Peter Lennie, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the third in this year's Phelps Colloquium series. And I'm especially delighted to see that we've attracted such a big crowd. About 18 months ago, some folks in art sciences and engineering thought it might be worthwhile to investigate what we could and should do, what we might be able to achieve with MOOCs. And as a result of that, you'll hear about what happened. But before I introduce the speakers, I'd like to give you a little background to our thinking in moving in this direction. First of all, we wanted to understand what it was like to do it. What were the challenges in producing these courses? What could we learn that would improve the way improve what we offer students, our own students who are in residence here, as a consequence of embracing these technologies and exploring what we could do. The second thing we wanted to understand was whether this was a good vehicle for getting the university's name abroad. Would it be, for example, a cost-effective way for the university to become better known in places where it wasn't well known? And explicitly, whether it would make it possible for us to have a broader international outreach. And the third thing was whether it would be possible to attract undergraduates from places we hadn't attracted them before. One of the things that several of us knew in getting into this was a little bit about the Stanford experience, in which it was clear from some of the early courses, particularly the computer science course, I believe, maybe it was the economics one, that with tens of thousands of enrollments, you flush out some spellbindingly bright people who take the course, and they make themselves evident to you in the way they engage with the folks who are teaching the course, through the questions they ask or how they answer other people's questions. And so one of the intriguing possibilities was that this would be yet another mechanism for us to discover otherwise inaccessible but potentially marvelous students to recruit. We know a lot about what happened as a result of this experience, and I certainly don't want to preempt this if that's what you're going to talk about, Eric. No. Well, I will say not much more about what we learned, and I'll leave it to Eric to characterize that, about the nature of the people we attracted to the courses, whether the sorts of aspirations we had in mounting them were to be satisfied by the outcomes. In any event, what we wanted, of course, was to do this well. We wanted to offer courses that we thought would be interesting, and we certainly wanted to have some stellar performers and faculty whom we could put in front of this potentially very large crowd. So two of the folks who volunteered to do this in the first round are here to talk this afternoon. John Covach, who has already done one and has two more. Where are you, John? Are you in the second one now?
The second series of two.
Second series of two for coming in February. And Mark Bocko, where are you, Mark? Mark Bocko, who with Rob Clark offered one last year. To frame what they did, and it was a marvelous work they did, we have Eric Fredericksen, who has been basically our executive and intellectual support in mounting the whole exercise. So without further ado, Eric, perhaps you'll introduce this and then take us through our experiment that's now been going on for about 18 months. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost Lennie, both for the opportunity to talk this afternoon, share what we've been doing and what our experience has been so far, as well as to the Phelps Colloquium for this opportunity to use this venue. How's everybody this afternoon? Okay, good. I'm going to walk through a little bit of the beginning of this, and then I'm going to turn it over to the real stars, who are Professor Covach and Professor Bocko. But let me back up. How about that one? When I talk about online learning, I usually start with a reminder that there are a variety of models, a lot of different definitions of online, when we say online learning or online course. And if John and I are talking, we have to be thoughtful when John will say online course and I say online course, and even though we're using the same terminology, we may be actually talking about different sorts of things. And there are a number of variables that go into this equation, and you can see a couple examples here. It can vary based on some of the attributes. It can be based on how much of the course is online. And so I'm trying to represent that there can be a little bit of apples and oranges to this. I would say that to give some context, there are other activities related to online learning initiatives here at the university. I put those as more like apples. And those are wonderful activities that are happening in the School of Nursing, School of Education, the Warner School. There are things starting to happen within the Simon School and the Eastman School. So those, again, are apples, and I think what we want to share today is actually tell you about some of the oranges that we're working on, okay? So we started this experimentation with the new model, this massive open online course model. We joined Coursera, which was one of the opportunities out there. We joined in February of 2013. Here are some of the goals that we had as we started this initiative. It was, as Provost Lennie said, it was to have that direct experience with this new innovative approach to instruction. There's been this opportunity to partner with some of our peers and learn from their experiences as well. It was an opportunity to have some of our faculty have this direct experience, and an opportunity to raise awareness about the University of Rochester to a broad new audience and to share some of the high quality academic experiences here. We started with a few courses last spring and summer. You see the list here. John did History of Rock Part 1 and 2, and Mark and Rob Clark did the Fundamentals of Audio and Music Engineering. Coming into this year, we have a couple more that we've been working on. Professor Adam Frank has been working on Highlights of Modern Astronomy. Dean Zupan, the Dean of the Simon School, is offering The Power of Markets. It's a graduate course in microeconomics. That's happening right now. And John is ready to jump on the horse again, and I think after the holidays we'll be starting the Music of the Beatles. Okay. Just a little bit about the nature of the design of the courses. There's a significant video component to the courses. You get some of the parameters that we work around. We do a lot of video work. We build quiz questions into the videos. We do that for two purposes. One is to a bit of a comprehension check for the students as they go through that, as well as to keep them engaged in the videos as we go through. We close caption and put subtitles with all of the videos. There's discussion forums. There's online quizzes that are part of these courses. Some courses, like Mark and Rob's students actually they had a project to build a speaker as part of their audio and music engineering course. So there's even the courses themselves, they vary in how they're comprised, how they're built, and even the length of the courses. So one thing Provost Lennie said was important was, for us to learn about this experience. And so I think we've really taken that to heart, and we really wanted to learn as much as we could about the student experience. And so we've been doing pre and post course studies of students, collecting as much data as we can about the students. I'm not going to read the slides to you, but to get a sense of, there's been quite a bit of data here. We've had good response rates for these type of survey instruments, anywhere from roughly 25 to almost 40% response rates, and more than 27,000 responses so far. So based on that, let me share just a little bit of a summary of how we're looking at the student feedback here. So if you come back to one of our goals about awareness of the institution, here's the first one thing I'd like to share with you. Prior to enrolling in the course, what was your connection to the University of Rochester? Were you familiar with us? If you take a look at the blue is, I've never heard of you before, okay? And the red is, I've heard the name, that's about it. And so you can see across all of these courses, and you're probably in the roughly 95% range, these are students that really have no connection to the institution at all. Okay? Might want to ask about where they're coming from. So we asked. So you can see roughly at least 2/3. Mark Supian's course was a little bit higher than that, but roughly 2/3 of the courses, the students are coming from out of the country. So Mike, you want to ask the question? Where are they coming from? Go ahead, ask it. So here's a breakdown, rank ordered by course of where the students are coming from. Okay? I'll leave that up for a second if you want to see that. Not exactly the same.
Not from China. Not many from China. What's going on there? They're such a big country.
I would say there wasn't as much they are starting to show up, and that's because there have been new arrangements with Coursera with sharing video content into that country, and that's been a recent development over the last couple months. So that may change as we go forward.
And, yeah, okay.
They've been keeping out the subversive rock and roll.
Save that question for Professor Covach. Okay? You might want to ask, okay, so what about the domestic students? Are these just students that are, in the, Monroe County? They're not. I mean, you can see that more than 90% of the students are outside of the state. Asked about sort of either academic preparation or achievement levels, and you get a sense of, are these just, high school students, or are these students that have already, achieved different sort of degrees? And so here's the breakdown by course. The notion that, these massive open online courses, at least from our experience so far, that they're only reaching that sort of high school, college-age student doesn't seem to align with this data, I don't think. Right? We're seeing lots of students that already have their degrees. Might want to ask the question about, about age, and here's an age breakdown for you. Varies a little bit by course. Okay. Now, Professor Covach and Professor Bocko are, I'm sure, going to be way too modest, but I will tell you they've done a stellar job, and we've gotten lots of terrific feedback about them and their courses. We get a variety of feedback. And I will tell you, in these studies that I've been doing with students, I have hundreds of pages of narrative in terms of the qualitative feedback from students. So rather than give you all of that, here are a couple examples of some of the voice of the students, so you get a feeling for what the students are saying. I think Mark prefers the very last bullet. He doesn't always get referred to as being cool as a professor. So that's some feedback on Mark and Rob, and here's some feedback about John Covach. So I won't read these to you, but I will pull out a couple ones. I like the third bullet. I took the course at the U of R in 1974, and this current course has provided me with a review and a look past 1974, and I look part 2. So that one's good, I think. I'll also refer you to the second to last bullet. My grandson just took a Beatles course at U of R from Professor Covach. So this is the grandfather or grandmother for one of our current students, and is in John's course. And this grandson recommended John in this course. He's done an outstanding job. I very much liked all the material he covered as well as the delivery. I recommended this to several friends. Okay? Okay, John, I'll mention the last bullet. John Covach rocks. Right?
Well, I'm thankful you left the one off about he needs to buy a new shirt.
We're not charging tuition for these courses, and so, but we'll work on it for you. Now, for those that have been reading lots in the Chronicle and in New York Times about, either, you see a couple of sort of dimensions to the story about the MOOC so far. One is enrolling millions of students, and this is the greatest thing, and it's going to revolutionize everything, and everything about them is wonderful. That's one sort of perspective on it. Or there's the recognition that the retention or completion rates of these courses are, 5%, 6%, and these are the most horrible, terrible things that have ever happened. So you kind of get that sort of thing. When we did an overview of some of this data with Provost Lennie, he encouraged us to take a little bit sort of deeper look at this issue, and so we've done a little bit more thoughtful sort of investigation to see if we could tease out a little bit more meaningful story out of this. So allow me to do a little bit of storytelling to walk you through this. So you can see here are the enrollments. Out of these first 6 courses, there's probably approximately 135,000 enrollments across those. So that's pretty significant. If you take a look at the completions, one thing I would say is, and Dean Supan just walked in, he's still in the middle of teaching his course, so that one's not over, so we don't have completion data for that. I don't know why he's here. He should be teaching his course. And John Covach, we are just wrapping up the History of Rock Part 2, the second session of that, and so that's not finished. So we don't have completion data on those 2 yet because they're not over. But I'm sharing with you the completion data on at least 4 of these, so you get that sort of sense. And again, if we just left it at that, you can either have a really good or bad sort of perspective on this. So what I'd like to do is actually encourage you to sort of walk through this with me, and let me sort of break down that enrollment number a little bit. The first is there's something within this enrollment that's called active. And active is someone that actually came into the course and did at least one thing, okay? Had to do, now it could be watched a video, took a quiz, posted a discussion, but they did something. Compared to Mike Gage. If Mike Gage was going to go in and just enroll in John's course,
I signed up for 10 of them.
right? Here's the process that Mike Gage used to take the course. He took his finger and he went like that. He clicked. That's all it takes to be in the blue bar here. And so we just have to recognize an enrollment here is very different than our dear friend Nancy Speck helping students enroll in courses and work with advisors and pay tuition bills and work with the bursar. None of that happens here. It is simply a click on an enroll button. So we just have to recognize, enrollment here is different than enrollment here.
Do you offer the option of de-enrollment? I mean, somebody
Students can do that. I'm sorry if you didn't hear. I should repeat the questions because it was a question. Can a student unenroll?
Yeah.
They can. And what happens there is sometimes our numbers even fluctuate a little bit from one day to the next. Anyway, so here's active. And what you'll see for John's first course, even though there were more than 34,000 enrollments, only 25,000 actually came in and did something. So 9,000, we lost 9,000 right away. Okay, so that's active. Of the active that came into the course, they were able to take this survey instrument and answer one of my questions around, I guess this is around intention. So were you committed? What did you want to do when you came to the course? Did you just want to look around, or did you really want to complete the entire course? And what you'll see from this is it's not dramatically different across the courses, but it's 2/3 to maybe 70% of the students are committed to doing it, which means roughly 30% of the students had no intention of completing the courses. So we might not want to sort of judge those students about whether they completed when they didn't expect or plan to do it to begin with. Okay? So in terms of my breakdown, I'm going to call this group of students committed. Take that for the right intention of committed. Okay? They're committed to taking the course, completing the course. Now, of the committed, I will tell you, even with the best of intentions, they did not make it all the way through. Life happened, family responsibilities, job obligations, etc. So I think that there's another category here that I'm referring to as dedicated, and these are students that persisted all the way through, and I'm measuring that as those that went through and completed the final exam. Okay? So I'm going to call that dedicated. And if you follow that breakdown, then this looks a little bit more like this sort of, again, parking Power of Markets and History of Rock Part 2, Session 2 to the side without the completion data. But you get a sense of that there's a breakdown of that enrollment data there. Okay? And I'll just go one more step. And that is coming back to the completion rates, retention rates. An important number, I think, here is the one in red, which is, regardless of all these numbers, we had more than 11,000 successful course completions in these courses in just the first 4. Okay? Now, if you want to compare and analyze the retention or completion rates, I'm sure Professor Gage, from a mathematics view, would say that calculation varies based on what's in the denominator, right? And so if you want to judge the completion rates based on enrollments, for whatever definition you have of enrollments, that might lead to one percentage level. But if you're willing to think about maybe it should be based on active, committed, or dedicated, then maybe there's a different sort of retention experience happening here. Okay?
Which group did the feedback comments come from?
Active. Because the ones, it couldn't only be enrollment because you actually had to come in to the course in order to take the survey instrument. Okay? All right, so that's a little bit of a sort of a preface to our overall experience. And what I really want to do is turn it over to the people that have done a wonderful job in developing and teaching these courses. And so, John, you're going next, right? So this is